Fles came a frantic yell as Blarg burst into the entrance, eyes wide with alarm. Fles, it's bad. Really, really bad. Fles, ever the calm one, barely looked up from his work. It is bad, he questioned, a hint of curiosity in his voice. What is bad? Everything seems rather standard to me. Blarg, panting from his hurried arrival, struggled to find the right words. It's the bipeds. They did a bad thing. I'm sure of it. They're acting weird, very, very weird. Fles sighed, his patience clearly being tested. Blarg, my friend, that's hardly news. Bipeds acting weird is as standard as it gets. I see nothing here that warrants alarm. Blarg, undeterred, shook his head vigorously. No. This is different. They're tripping over their speech at a rate that's way beyond the usual. I'm certain of it. Fles tilted his head slightly, considering Blarg's words. Once again, I must disagree. That behavior still falls within typical parameters. Blarg, clearly frustrated by Fles's nonchalance, racked his brain for something more convincing. Negative, he repeated, as if testing the word on his tongue. Why negative? I'm sure we and the bipeds' language had a simpler way of saying that. Fles merely shrugged. Perhaps news of today's peculiarities hasn't reached you yet. Today is a day for weirdness, but it will pass. Blarg's eyes widened in realization. Thy, he exclaimed. Why thy? The bipeds' language split with thy centuries ago. Wait, centuries? Why am I saying that? There's a simpler word. Fles looked at him, his expression still calm. As I said, perhaps the day's news has eluded you. Everything is as it should be. Blarg, sensing something amiss, pressed on. It's April, isn't it? April the 1st. The bipeds are playing a prank, I'm sure of it. No, not a prank, an experiment. They've experimented on their language. Fles readjusted his posture, his demeanor unchanging. Perhaps he conceded. It seems the news has finally reached you. Though, I must say, I've noticed little difference myself. Blarg, growing more agitated, urged Fles to look closer. Peer harder. Look for the weirdness. But Fles, despite Blarg's insistence, remained unbothered. I've looked, he replied after a moment of silence, and I still see nothing out of the ordinary. Nada. Negative. Blarg, now almost certain that Fles was playing some kind of trick on him, demanded, Stop messing with me. I can tell something's off. Fles, maintaining his calm facade, replied, I assure you, I'm playing perfectly straight. I'm not messing with you at all. Blarg, now thoroughly convinced that something was amiss, shouted, Stop. But as their conversation looped endlessly, with Blarg convinced that something was wrong and Fles insisting everything was normal, neither alien realized the partial truth in Blarg's words. The bipeds had indeed been experimenting, as Blarg suspected, and their language was the subject. As Fles had pointed out, the bipeds' weirdness was nothing new. In fact, it was quite standard, and as the bipeds, hidden from the aliens' view, listened in on their conversation, they chuckled at the confusion they had caused. The aliens, oblivious to the fact that they were the subjects of the bipeds' experiment, continued their circular discussion, neither fully aware of what was truly happening. As the circular conversation dragged on, Blarg's frustration grew more palpable. Fles, he exclaimed, his voice tinged with desperation, you must see it now. It's so clear these bipeds are doing something to their language. Their words are all tangled, their meanings twisted. They've done something, and it's not right. Fles, remaining as unruffled as ever, met Blarg's frantic gaze with a slow nod. Blarg, you're overthinking this, he replied, his tone almost soothing. The bipeds are always doing strange things with their language. They twist it, turn it, make it do somersaults, but it always comes back to normal. This is no different. Relax, my friend. You're seeing patterns where there are none. Blarg, far from reassured, shook his head. No, this is different. They're speaking in ways that don't make sense. It's not just weird, it's wrong. I know it. Fles sighed, the sound heavy with a patience that seemed infinite. Blarg, he said softly, Language is fluid. It changes, it adapts. What you see as wrong might just be a new way they're expressing themselves. You're getting worked up over nothing. But Blarg was not convinced. He paced back and forth, his mind racing. It's not just a new expression, he muttered, almost to himself. It's something deliberate, something they've done on purpose. They're experimenting, I'm sure of it. They're pushing the boundaries of their language in a way they've never done before. Fles tilted his head, his expression one of mild curiosity. And if they are, he asked, almost nonchalantly, what does it matter? Let them experiment. Let them push their boundaries. It doesn't affect us. Blarg stopped in his tracks, turning to face Fles with a look of determination. It does affect us, he insisted. We communicate with them. If they change their language, it changes how we interact with them. We have to understand what they're doing, or we'll be left behind. Fles remained unconvinced, his demeanor unchanged. You're overreacting, he said simply. Language evolves. It always has. We'll adapt, just as we always have. There's no need to panic. Blarg, his frustration boiling over, clenched his fists. You don't get it, he shouted. This isn't just evolution. This is sabotage. They're sabotaging their own language, and we're caught in the crossfire. Fles raised an eyebrow, a hint of amusement in his eyes. Sabotage, he repeated. Really, Blarg, that's a bit dramatic, don't you think? But Blarg was beyond reason now. It's not dramatic, he insisted. It's the truth. They're doing this on purpose, and they're laughing at us. They know we're confused, and they're enjoying it. Fles shook his head, a small smile playing on his lips. Blarg, he said gently, you're letting your imagination run wild. The bipeds aren't laughing at us. They're just being themselves. Weird, yes, confusing sometimes, but not malicious, never malicious. Blarg, feeling a sense of futility creeping in, slumped down into a chair. Maybe you're right, he murmured, his voice barely audible. Maybe I'm just imagining things, but it still feels wrong. It feels like they're doing this on purpose, like they're trying to see how far they can push us. Fles nodded, his expression thoughtful. Perhaps they are, he conceded. But even if they are, what can we do? We can't control how they use their language. All we can do is try to keep up, to understand as best we can. And if that means adapting to their quirks, so be it. Blarg sighed. The fight drained out of him. I just wish they'd stop messing with us, he muttered. It's exhausting, trying to keep up with their ever-changing ways. Fles smiled, a warm, understanding smile. I know, he said softly. But that's part of the challenge, isn't it? Part of what makes our interactions with them so interesting. They keep us on our toes, keep us thinking. It's not always easy, but it's never boring. Blarg managed a small smile in return, though his worry hadn't entirely dissipated. Maybe you're right, he admitted, though doubt still lingered in his voice. Maybe I'm just overthinking things. Fles nodded, his smile widening. Maybe he agreed. But that's why we work well together, Blarg. You see the details, the things that might slip by unnoticed. And I keep us grounded, remind us not to get too caught up in the what-ifs. Together we find the balance. Blarg chuckled softly, the tension easing slightly. You always know how to put things into perspective, Fles. I guess I needed that. Fles's smile was one of quiet satisfaction. Any time, Blarg, he replied. Any time. And as the two aliens sat in companionable silence, the bipeds, still listening unseen, shared another round of quiet laughter. They knew their experiment had been a success, though neither Blarg nor Fles would ever fully realize just how deeply the bipeds had pulled them into their linguistic web. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. For every comment that says we will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.